a mailer sent out about a woman named Kim Schreier, who is a Jewish candidate for a high-profile congressional seat outside of Seattle, Washington. The mailer was sent out by the Washington State Republican Party. And it shows Kim Schreier clutching a fistful of money. It's just hard to believe, isn't it? Here's another example. Scott Kendall, who is the chief of staff for the governor of Alaska, Bill Walker, who's an independent. Scott Kendall is a Jewish Republican. Figure that one out. And he said he had just spoken to his 7-year-old son about why it was important to continue to go to synagogue, so that what Mr. Kendall called the bad guys wouldn't win. And this was after his 7-year-old son became aware that 11 people had been slaughtered by a Trump supporter inside a synagogue. The chief of staff, Scott Kendall, had been to memorials at synagogues in Juneau and Anchorage, where he lives. Alaska has a Jewish population numbering in a couple of thousand. And then he saw the mailer from a local Republican group attacking Jewish state Senate candidate Jesse Kiehl, with the image of a man stuffing a fat stack of $100 bills into his suit. And don't forget what they used on Kim Schreier with a fistful of money. Kendall, in a phone interview, saying he believed the ad was blatantly anti-Semitic, said, quote, "I was revolted." Jesse, the candidate, is proudly and prominently a member of Juneau's Jewish community. It is tough for me to process through that and not see an ill intent by whoever sent it out. This is just a classic definition of fascism in its most pedestrian form. Fascism, of course, is more complicated than just attacking groups, but this is how it starts. And you build your base based on hate and fear. And that's all that Trump has done. And his minions of assholes that come out of the Fox sewer every single day to help him. So anyway, I was talking about how Republicans now openly attack Jewish candidates. In North Carolina, the state Republican Party, I'm not talking about some fringe candidate, the state Republican Party of North Carolina. And let me just say, what a fucking shame what has happened in North Carolina. It's such a beautiful state. It has a couple of world-class universities, more than a couple. It has mountains that will take your breath away and seashores that are just stunning. And for the longest time, it was run by Democrats. And then something happened, and I don't know what. I have no idea. And now Republicans control it, and it's a shame. The state Republican Party of North Carolina depicted Charles Schumer, a Democrat of New York, who has absolutely nothing to do with political races in North Carolina. But they depicted Charles Schumer, who's a Jew, with stacks of bills in his hands. You notice a pattern here? It doesn't make any difference what part of the country the Republican parties of the various states depict Jews clutching stacks of money. I mean, these fuckers can't even be original in their stereotyping, in their hate message that they're getting out to their terrified white Christian fascist supporters. Jews with stacks of money. Great. I mentioned outside Seattle in a congressional race, The Republicans there show Kim Schreier of the Democratic Congress, who's Jewish, with a wad of $20 bills fanned out in her hands. In California, a Republican state assembly candidate tinted his Jewish challenger a shade of green in an ad that adds $100 bills into his grip for good measure. In Pennsylvania, a Republican state representative ran an ad that painted Democratic challenger Sarah Johnson Rothman, a Jew, with money in her hands. It also removed her maiden name, Johnson, from the graphic and left the one she took from her husband, Scott Rothman. You see, Sarah Johnson Rothman is not Jewish, but her husband is. So the Republican Party in Pennsylvania dropped the Johnson and left on the Rothman so everybody would know, oh, she's a Jew. An ad against Jesse Kiehl, I mentioned this, put together by the Republican women of Juneau, Alaska, was anti-Semitic. National outcry happened last week after a Republican state Senate candidate's ad in Connecticut against his Jewish challenger was digitally altered in a way to play off classic anti-Semitic tropes. The candidate, the Democratic state rep Matthew Lesser, was depicted holding a wad of cash in front of him. You notice this? Connecticut, Alaska, it doesn't make any difference where. It is a coordinated effort. This is how deeply embedded anti-Semitic, anti-black, anti-immigrant sentiment the Republican Party has dug into the American political system. Jesus Christ. So who do you think it was that promoted the crazed son of a bitch to go into a synagogue and slaughter 11 Jews who were in their services? Trump and the Republicans. They're the ones, every day they commit this blood libel against the Jews. Every single fucking day. Pamela Nadell, a history professor at American University, and the director of that university's Jewish Studies program said, quote, "What's stunning is that these are old images that are very similar to those from other eras and other places. For example, Nazi Germany." She added, "But I will say I have not seen images like this in 21st century America before," end quote. And that's because Trump and the Christian fascists are taking this country into a horrible situation. It's just fucking unbelievable. By the time you hear this podcast, a decision will have been made as to whether or not the United States should continue on a Trump-led path with the Christian fascists at his side to complete totalitarianism that I call fascism, or a breathing point. If the Democrats have gotten control of the House of Representatives, there's a chance, not a big one, but a chance we can turn this around. A professor of European history at Brown University and the author of a book examining Jewish stereotypes said of this recent crop of ads by the Christian Republicans, quote, "There's some famous Nazi posters that have exactly the same images, but with different people," end quote. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.